right, in the interest of time, we will go ahead and get started for today. First couple of minutes here are intro, so hopefully that will give a few more attendees an opportunity to jump on. Welcome everybody, or welcome back if you've joined us for a previous webinar. I'm Jessica Mellema. I lead corporate marketing and communications for Spinutech. If you aren't familiar with us, Spinutech is a full-service web design and digital marketing agency with offices in Cedar Falls and Des Moines, Iowa, Chicago, Denver, and Tampa. And we have remote team members in more than 25 states. Our team helps our clients build unique customer experiences to grow traffic, convert leads, and track their entire marketing funnel all in one spot. One of our core values at Spinutech is we get better every day. So GBED that you see on the screen here. We strive to get better for ourselves, our teammates, and our clients. And we're a team of lifelong learners, and we want to share our expertise and our discoveries with you, which is why we launched this webinar series. Whether you are already one of our partners or we've not yet met you, we hope that you learned something today, and we would love to continue the conversation beyond today's presentation. If you learned just a little bit of something and you want to know more about it, we would love to connect. Today, you're going to hear from 3 of our subject matter experts. They're going to speak about strategies for optimizing your site and your online presence to be as visible as possible to users in your target network. Taylor Fisher is an SEO team lead currently in Connecticut, soon to be California. Derek Larrabee is an SEO team lead in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Ben Johnson is a senior SEO strategist in our Des Moines area office. The strategies these 3 are going to cover today range from very basic kind of table stakes items to really complex premier level approaches that you might be hard pressed to implement without partnering with an agency to develop and implement a long-term integrated SEO roadmap. We encourage you to ask questions along the way. The Q&A is open. There isn't a chat feature open today, but the Q&A is open, and I will be monitoring that throughout the presentation. And we plan to leave hopefully 5 to 10 minutes to answer some of your questions at the end of today's presentation. And with that, we will jump in with Taylor, who's going to start us off talking about the 3 essential elements of local SEO.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, so local SEO as an individual strategy is definitely one of the fastest growing and one of the most important SEO strategies you can implement, especially if you operate in a specific market or region. So it's really a strategy that is designed for improving your performance in specific regional areas. And that can be as broad as country level, and it can be as specific as ranking in particular neighborhoods within a small city. When people think about who they're marketing to, they oftentimes will focus a lot on building their ideal customer or a consumer persona, but sometimes they forget that where a person lives should really be a part of that process. Understanding where your ideal customer is located and how far they're willing to travel for your services will have a noticeable impact on the success of your business. So at a very high level, local SEO is really a combination of looking in 3 distinct areas. Those are your SERP results, or what users see when they're searching for things in the text. They're your maps results, so whether or not you're showing up when users are looking in a regional area, if you're part of that local 3-pack at the top of search result pages, and how accurate your citations are. So when users are looking not just on large search engines like Google, but when they're looking at places like Yelp or through social media engines like Facebook, do they see reviews for your business? Do they see your listing? So we really want to make sure when we're implementing local strategies that we're considering these 3 elements. Having strategists and tools in place that can keep an eye on those citations across the web is really important long-term for the accuracy and growth of the business. So you really want to make sure you're understanding not just how to set up these listings and citations, but how you can monitor and manage these in the long term. And how you can make sure you have that accuracy, not just for listings you control, but for some of those aggregate sites where your listings might be popping up as well. And that really makes it possible for you to be hitting on those 3 pillars of local SEO. The 3 pillars being proximity, prominence, and relevance, or what we would think of as how close is a business, how popular or well-reviewed is a business, and how relevant are those businesses, products, and services to the consumer. So if we look then at the low level strategy and what that really entails, you will find that at the base or the foundation of that strategy is the Google Business Profile. This is owned and a part of the Google Suite. And so Google, as the largest search engine, is always going to look to itself for those answers first. And you do have full control as a business owner over your Google Business Profile. So this is hands down one of the most powerful citations that you can have and use at your disposal. It's really the foundation of your local presence in Google search results as well. And it does have the ability to sync with Bing Places. So if you connect your Google Business Profile account with your Bing Places account, you can save some time by updating all of your Google listings and seeing them showing up across Bing as well. So that is another opportunity to be in another prominent search engine with full control over those results there as well. You really want to make sure when you're setting up and initially claiming these, you're focusing on having that consistent NAP information, which is your name, your address, and your phone number. This is the baseline for your local presence, and you want to make sure that these are accurate and consistent across all the places where your listing exists. So really having identical results is really important there. Even if your business, for instance, offers more than one phone number, all of those numbers might work, but not having that consistency across your listings on the web can get them flagged for being potentially inaccurate or false information. So it's really important during this process that you're aligning your business goals with the goals you have for your search-facing presence and really consolidating what you want that conversion path to look like for users. So then moving on past that NAP information, there are a lot of things you can do with your Google Business Profile beyond just the name, address, and phone number. I really encourage everyone to think of Google Business Profiles like landing pages. A lot of times these are the first interaction that users are going to have with your business, and there is opportunity for them to convert right there in the search results before they even get to the website. So there's always that option to click to the site, but there's also going to be options beyond that, like clicking to get directions, clicking to make a call. And if you utilize some of those additional features, there will be other points that they can ultimately convert as well. Now, some businesses are going to be brick and mortar and you might have to visit the business. Other times it will be a service area. You might deliver services directly to your customer's door. And there's different ways to set those up as well, including setting up products, services, menus, and pricing as well can all be right there on the profile. You can also add additional information and resources that can help users get further into the website a lot faster. So instead of having to click through several categories on the site, they might click directly onto a service page from your Google Business Profile. You also have the opportunity to share here through post updates, news updates, as well as advertise sales and coupon codes and things like that. So you really want to make sure you're focusing on these opportunities for in-search conversion, including things like maybe scheduling an appointment could happen right there. So really all businesses should have Google Business Profile. Smaller businesses might stop here, but I really recommend everyone go beyond this, especially if you have a larger set of locations or you're located in multiple regions. And so with that, I will pass to my teammate, Ben Johnson, to walk you through some of the mid-level strategies.
Thank you, Taylor. So now that we have kind of established what that base level strategy looks like, we can begin to layer in some more complex tactics like keyword research and content development to be able to target some of those terms and business critical things, terminology that you'll need to maintain that core traffic. However, before we dive into something like keyword research, it's really important to establish a certain amount of information about your business that's important, that will help guide you through the process of keyword research and content creation. And some of those questions are things like, what type of business are you? Are you truly a local business or are you more of a national business? And the reason these things are very relevant to how you create content is a truly local business would build different content than what a national business with multiple locations might build. It might go beyond the scope of what that single location business would do. And so in this case, if you are truly a local business, building local content that targets those really hyper local terms are going to be incredibly important to driving traffic to your site, because it's just that one location and you're representing a smaller area. So owning those local terms is important. If you're a larger business with multiple locations, building content like city listing pages can help to create a local presence across multiple local areas, and even kind of level that up to state listing pages if you're beyond even just a single state and you represent multiple states. These types of questions and the answers that really come from them are very important to guide you through this process, because oftentimes it can lead to inefficiencies or wasted resources if you go in a direction that you may not need to, or in this case, maybe underdeveloped content that you should develop, leaving some opportunity on the table. So once you've established the answer to these questions, we can move into the keyword research phase of this. Now, keyword research at its base level, specifically on the local side, is very important for content development. It helps to push you in the right direction and understand what users are looking for in SERP that might lead them to your business. And so as you're developing specifically local keyword research, a very fundamental and foundational part that you need to understand is the difference between a local term and a non-local term. A local term, or in this case, for a moving company is an example we have on the right here. A local term would be something like moving company NYC, moving company Brooklyn. Those are terms that have a local modifier appended to the actual result of a non-local term. So moving company by itself would be non-local, and moving company Brooklyn would be local. So it's important to understand, thinking back to that first slide, where are you trying to earn traffic? Where are you trying to reach? And so this is where you can use that information to then research the areas and find those local modifiers that are going to be incredibly important for when you start to build content onto your site. Now, there are some nuances with this because Google is a complicated algorithm, and there are instances in which a non-local term will return a local result. So you'll throw in something like moving company, and you might all of a sudden get a bunch of local results for that. And the reason is based on your user settings, the proximity to the results that you're looking for, and any number of different factors can layer into why Google might say, well, this is a non-local term, it doesn't have a local modifier, but we're going to serve a local result. And this is really where it's important to understand the terms that you want to target. Make sure that you're thoroughly vetting all of that, understanding where you want to take the content that you're going to be building, and ultimately build those lists in that direction so that when you get to the keyword or to the content building phase, you have a very, very specific approach to what type of content you want to build. So now that we have established that foundation, we can move into the actual content building production. And now that you have that local research and you've established all of these areas that you want to target, and you've established the information that you'll need to know what content to produce, so what type of business you are, now we can build the actual content for your site. Now, one thing you might ask yourself is, well, there's lots of content I can build. What content should I build for my site? What's the most important stuff? And we would say that if you're a smaller business, maybe a one location business that's representing a single city or state, is focus on things like location detail pages. These are pieces of content that represent your business information, and they can help to fill in the gaps where maybe Google My Business or Bing Places can't fill in some of those gaps. So adding some more information, things like CTAs and internal linking, that help to essentially build the equivalent of a GMB on your site. And the nice part about these pages is that you can actually then connect them to your GMBs and Bing Places and these different types of citations to create a more holistic experience for your users. Now, if you're a larger business, say you have multiple listings, it's probably more prudent to build location detail pages for your independent locations, and then also layer on city and state listing pages. These are really good ways to, again, capture more of that local audience across the nation, and to then begin to have an actual presence in these areas to earn that traffic and begin to rank more efficiently. Now, there are a lot of considerations to take into as you're building this content. There are a lot of nuances to take into account as you're building this content. A lot of them are around what is the type of user experience you want for any given user coming onto your site? How do you conduct business at your location? And how do you want to make sure that the content you're building fits into that process that you've built? For example, if you are maybe something that's more of a longer tail service situation where it takes multiple decisions for a user to purchase, looking at a different set of keywords might be prudent. So looking at something like long tail keywords that have much more of an intent behind them, because that user might be more willing to convert for something that takes that longer purchase path. And this is really where we go back to that keyword research phase. And that's where the understanding of the types of terms you want to target can really help to make this process of content creation far more efficient and ultimately allow you to create more content because you can be efficient with those resources. So now that we've established what this content looks like and generally what that mid-level strategy would be for a site, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Derek, to take you through the premier strategy.
Thanks, Ben. So if it hasn't been clear to this point, most of the effort that goes into that local strategy really revolves around helping your ideal customer find their way to your products or services. Anytime you can lead with that empathy as you're conducting that keyword research that Ben was sort of speaking to, it can further assist that user in that journey through the funnel at that local level. And so applying that level of strategic detail can really help your local messages on that local page sort of area of your site become really highly specific to those nuances within each of those markets or geographic areas. So as you're going through the steps of planning this local page content and really leaning into putting those words on the page based on those keywords and some of that research you have up front, try to uncover some of those highly searched terms or just very niche searches around your physical locations. These searches can sometimes contain local modifiers, that city or state reference, or sometimes it can be references to landmarks, like the example above with the Golden Gate Bridge. And so these types of references to those local landmarks that almost triangulate where you are can make that content even more helpful. So as you go through these considerations, think about things like, is your location in that particular city difficult to find by a particular vehicle type? Is signage tough to see? Are you near any known or popularly referenced landmarks? So again, that Golden Gate search is a prime example there, but anything that is commonly referred to throughout that city is a great thing to throw in there to kind of remind that user that you're near a particular object. Is that location in a part of the town with a unique nickname that is really only known locally? A lot of times those search modifiers will start to show up in your data, and it's a great idea to kind of layer those into that core keyword set just to make that content even more specific to that reader in that particular market. An even more complex consideration, I know Ben touched on this a little bit earlier, is just the local nature of your business. When you're thinking of this page content, it's a lot about setting expectations. So consider explaining things and considering, do you have physical staff ready to serve at that city or state level? Or does the business model serve an entire geographic footprint like a state or a city, but in a remote sort of fashion? A lot of those particular, kind of dependencies per business can be layered in to really clearly set that expectation for the user as they browse through that local site content. Any products and services available should really also be considered here too, especially depending on the page type. You can give some sort of localized spins to some of your core services and products by using some of those geographic modifiers to really sort of drive that user into the site deeper to learn more about whatever your business has to offer. So these are all just really great considerations for location detail page content to really round out that local strategy and focusing purely on answering that end user's needs, which, as we know, are different for every business category. If this research and all of your work up to this point is segmented and organized by location, you can really, really lean on those types of data insights from that search information to make that content just really, really meant for your local audience. In an ideal scenario, they'd feel like you're sort of speaking directly to them. So taking this a step further and looking at local citations, this is perhaps one of the most challenging but rewarding local SEO strategies, which involves essentially getting other sites to amplify your location in addition to those products and services that you provide from that location. So the big quality metrics here are relevance and quality. Those are the biggest factors that you should consider when you talk about citation building. So if you're working with a partner and that's not the sort of key focus, just remember that a strategy that focuses on quality of links and citations versus the overall quantity of them will be much higher value to you in the long run, as long as you're really keeping that lens on the work being done here. The sites providing quality information in your particular business vertical are going to differ quite a bit from some of those other business categories. depending on, again, the business type and local nature of the particular location. So it's really important to use a tool or work with an agency partner to kind of determine where those trustworthy platforms are. So we started this with, Google Business Profiles. That's sort of number one, right? But when you're thinking about expanding off to other platforms, think about things like local site directories, local publications. I think, local business journals are always a good example that comes up in that category. You might also consider commonly known platforms, like Yelp and Angie's List. Those are really popular sites that feature citations from a ton of different types of businesses that are, again, validating what you do. You can also layer in things like the Better Business Bureau, right? Those are really local sources of information that try to help users find answers to the problems that they're searching online. Once you have that list, it can be really helpful to just spend some time on those websites to just get a feel for the type of information they are providing. You might notice while you're on those sites that there are even contributions and location citation information from other businesses. And so obviously that's a good indicator of your ability to get there, because that's what you're going to want to be making sure you're doing as well, is trying to find and identify that process to get your business information onto that site. Try to answer questions like, are the citations on this particular platform able to be claimed? Is there a fee to manage that information and make it custom to your business? A lot of times you can order, your opportunities by some of these factors. If budget is an issue, I would say that, just as Taylor mentioned earlier, making sure your name, address, and phone number information, or that NAP info, is correct and consistent within that network of citations should be that initial focus. Do this to those free sites first if you're looking for sort of that low-hanging fruit, and then expand to those paid platforms, as your budget opens up and it allows for a little bit of extra focus there on citation growth. So we're at a point now where we're essentially going to open up the floor for some questions.
Yep. Thanks, Derek. The first question that came in from Bethany is, what tools can we use to research what keywords our potential clients are using? So keyword research tools.
I think for me, I'm always a fan of Keyword Planner because it's within the Google suite. And so I like to be there. If you're trying to see what they're using right now, as opposed to planning ahead, you do have the ability in there to look at keywords by domain, for instance. So you could get a grab of what Google is already associating with the business by the domain. There's also some competitor tools out there, such as SimilarWeb. I think if you partner with an agency, they usually will have access to a suite of tools that maybe you wouldn't want to pay for individually at the company level. But Keyword Planner is always, I think, a great place to start when you're just getting into that keyword research.
Thanks, Taylor. Another question here. I think Ben kind of touched on some of these, and Taylor did too. The basic profile that we know we need our NAP and our hours and some of those basic things to be consistent and present. But you also touched on some additional items like products and services that you can feature within your profile, posts, updates, kind of building on the basics. Which of those are maybe the most valuable that can most impact performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say for me, I always recommend, I lean more towards the content side. And so I love GMB post. I think is something that's just really underutilized by a lot of clients. It's a really great way to get updates out actively and to show that you are interacting with your profile a little more frequently. And they do have different post types as well, which allows you to do some essentially sorting, categorizing the type of content that you offer. A great example of that is when COVID really started to affect businesses. Google Business Profiles did roll out a specific COVID-19 update. So Google also will do its part in trying to get some of those posts, higher up on the page when it's really relevant. But I know Ben too works with a lot of businesses that have like a really large national presence, and probably does a lot more with like services and things. So Ben, if you disagree, definitely chime in.
Oh, no, I was going to say, just to layer onto that, yeah, posts are a critical part of any GMB strategy. In fact, I would say in today's world, in 2022, it's a really critical part of maintaining your voice in SERP. It has that opportunity to give you that voice that maybe you don't always have in that sense. But to layer onto that, I would say one thing that I always keep in mind is, again, to go back to that kind of mid-level strategy slide, is just thinking about kind of business you are. If you are, for instance, like a restaurant or a bar, having things like products maybe aren't as important, but having your menu items and all of those things listed on your GMB are incredibly important, because you can get things like no-click conversions where someone will just go to your restaurant without needing to go to your website. But then there are other situations where you have businesses that are maybe more e-com focused or service based, where having those product sections filled out can be a really efficient way to just funnel users directly into those high converting pages. And even to layer onto that, there's things like trying to connect your city listings pages, or the city detail pages, excuse me, by connecting that to your GMB, again, kind of we touched on earlier, it creates that holistic experience. By trying to connect as much things you can to Google My Business in a natural way, it really shows not just to the user, but also to Google in that sense, that you're leveraging the Google suite to then help to increase the performance in general, just the experience that a user has on your site. And that's really ultimately what Google's goal is to get a user from a query to their destination with as few clicks and searches as possible.
And by Google My Business, we mean Google Business Profile, because they have changed their name, right?
Thank you.
Just to make sure everybody's connecting those two dots.
Google Business Profile.
So one quick follow-up question here about posts, GMB posts, and then we have two other questions, so I want to be mindful of time. How many GMB posts per week or month do you recommend?
I mean, for me, I recommend once a week as a good starting cadence. And then if you have bandwidth for more, you certainly can. Generally, posts last for about 7 days. So, having one that's always live kind of helps to give that freshness to it. Taylor, I don't know if you have a different viewpoint, or Derek, if you guys have a different viewpoint on it.
Okay, we'll go with Ben's answer. Everybody else is being quiet. All right, two more questions that have come in. What's the best way to get to know what the local keywords are in an area if we have multiple locations and we aren't located in that specific area?
I think start broad would probably be my recommendation. So if you really take a step back at your product or service, what are those keywords first? Because then you can start to create a scenario where you're going from broad to specific, and you can start layering on different modifiers that you assume to be true for a certain area. So the obvious ones are state and city, but you might use a near me reference, and you can really start to also use from that point some of your first party data. So I would really encourage you, if you haven't set up platforms like Google Search Console that are free and will give you information about what a particular page is being searched for and showing up for, that can be a great first starting point too, to be able to see kind of that local behavior with regard to a specific location page. I think if you don't have a location page to lean on, then I think you kind of would fall more in that first category where you're really trying to start broad and go specific. So I'd say broad keyword research, or use some of those free platforms like Google Search Console to be able to visualize sort of that actual user behavior.
Okay. And then another question here. I've heard that SEO on a site works with a combination of visible text and content, as well as metadata behind the scenes for images and other things. Which is more important to focus on first? Sort of what the user can see or what they can't see?
I always default to on page first, because generally speaking, the content that you have is really where a lot of that value is derived from. Having those physical words on a page, having a really solid H1, and then that descending structure with H2s, layering in things like CTAs and internal linking are really powerful ways to, at a base level, just create that content and get those rankings going and see how you're impacting the marketplace. And then you can kind of step into the background realm where you can layer in things like metadata, specifically page titles, meta descriptions, and even go beyond that with things like structured data. and just being able to kind of leverage all of these tools and levers to maximize the effectiveness of a page. But yeah, I would definitely start with on-page content first.
I saw Taylor and Derek nodding. We are in agreement. Okay.
Yes, and on your own site too, I think is the sort of underscore to Ben's point. You're doing things on your own site, your own domain. So start there and get everything at home right first.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we are at time. One kind of note that I know our team talked about a lot as we prepared for this today that I would throw out just broadly here is we at Spinutech believe very, very firmly in the value of starting any SEO efforts with an audit that covers not just local, but looking at also technical and content and all the different layers of SEO and developing a roadmap. There are going to inevitably, I think, with SEO be things that you can tackle in the short term that might give you, high impact, quick wins, but there are also things that just take a longer time to plan out and work against gradually. So doing an audit and kind of mapping that out, like quick hit versus long term, and how to run those programs alongside of each other is really important. It's SEO is just it's not necessarily all about those short-term gains, right? It's not media where you spend and you get a result immediately. So being a little bit patient, I think, it comes with the territory. Thank you all for joining us. I will say, watch for an email from us tomorrow with a link to the recording of today's event. If you want to share that, you may. It'll be just publicly available on our site, but we'll send you a direct link tomorrow. Our next webinar is coming up on July 21st, a little earlier in the month, next month. And that will be led by Spinutech paid media strategists, Matt McKay and Chase Bojan, who are going to explore paid media campaign types and bid strategies based on automation and machine learning. I think if you're in the digital media world, you're hearing a lot about automation and machine learning. So we'll dig into that next month. Because you attended today's webinar, we will put you on our list to send you an invitation directly to that webinar, so you'll have the registration details. In the meantime, if you have any questions about what we shared today, or if we didn't get to your question, you think of something after the fact, please reach out to us. We have an email address set up specifically for these webinar questions. They're webinar@spinutech.com. And we thank you so much for your time today.